Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this next level webinar titled IT as an Agent of Change. This webinar will be presented by New Horizons Training Partner Manager Mechanics' very own Eric Bloom. My name is Brian Duncan, and I will be the MC for the event. So what that means is that if you do have any questions or any comments, please feel free to put those in the question or chat box on the right-hand side, and I will relay those to Eric as we go. And if it's something that I can answer, I will go ahead and take care of it right there on the spot. One thing that I will say is that we do record these webinars, so we will be sending everybody access to a recording of the webinar, following the webinar to go back and review. So look out for that email coming sometime this afternoon. This webinar, as is all of our next level webinars, is brought to you by New Horizons Computer Learning Center. Who is New Horizons? New Horizons is a proven worldwide training provider with flexible learning solutions covering a broad spectrum of topics taught by industry-leading instructors. Our large international network and our flexible integrated learning methods. Just a few bullet points here for you to read. But that's not why you're here. You're actually here to listen to Eric talk about IT as an agent of change. So right now I'd like to welcome Eric.
Hi, Brian, and thank you for New Horizons for sponsoring this, and also to you, Brian, as our engineer. As always, it's a pleasure to work with you. I'll give you just one quick slide on who I am, and then you got 58 minutes of content ahead of you. My name is Eric Bloom. I'm the president and founder of Manager Mechanics. Our company specializes in IT leadership and IT business skills training. I'm proud to say we've been a very strong business partner of New Horizons for, my God, almost 7 years now. I guess time flies when you're having fun. The courses we do with them are the ITMLE and ITMLE Certification Boot Camps, as well as some other classes you'll see in our last slide. A little bit more on me, as I'm a CIO by background with 25 plus years experience, the author of various books shown here, the most recent of which just came out a couple of months ago is called Productivity Driven Success. If you're interested in productivity, I'd buy the book. Don't wait for the movie. I haven't been contacted by Hollywood yet and don't quite expect to. I'm also a adjunct research advisor for IDC on the CIO advisory part, that basically we do what Gartner does. I'm also was a nationally syndicated columnist for 4 years and about 250 newspapers a week on either called Manager Mechanics or Eric P. Bloom, depending on the media market. Write for CIO.com called Driving IT Productivity. And actually I have a new TEDx. I don't know if I told this to you, Brian, but I have a new TEDx that came out that's finally hit YouTube. It's called The 4 Zones of Personal Productivity. And I think eventually probably we'll do a webinar on it. You can catch it online there. It's about 14 minutes. I'm a coach. I'm past president of National Speakers Association. But enough about me. How about now we have about 58 minutes or 57 minutes now totally having to do with you. Now, just some initial thoughts as we talk about change. In 535 BC, well, actually that was the year he was born, but sometime shortly thereafter, the Greek philosopher came up with this quote: "There is nothing permanent except change." Fast forward a whole bunch of years, but keeping us in Greece, then what happens is you'll see that there's another quote here. "Since we cannot change reality, let us change the eyes which see reality." Now let's move from Greece, across the English Channel to England, where we have Winston Churchill, and move forward also another 100 years-ish. To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often. Now, as the Brits say, let's bring it across the pond. Poof. And John F. Kennedy. Change is the law of life. And those who look only at the past or present are certain to miss the future. Now, I'm done with the quotes here, I promise you. But anyway, the question is why have people been writing about change for thousands of years? Literally thousands of years, as shown here in this example. The reason is, it's hard. It's not easy to change. And what we're going to be talking about as we get into today's webinar is why it's hard, and then things that we can do as whether we're just thought leaders or we're project leaders, whether we're IT managers, or in whatever role where we're trying to invoke change, or in many cases just accept change for ourselves. But now, yeah, okay, I've told you it's hard. Why is it hard? Well, one of the reasons is that everybody wants change, but no one wants to be the one to change. So everybody loves the idea of it. You know, is that I won't go Democrat or Republican. I know we're in political season, but I will say that virtually every one of the elections over the last 50 years, either a Democrat or Republican, usually someone who's less for the group that's out of power at that time. What do they always say? They want to bring in change. You know, look back all the way past Kennedy to Roosevelt and so on. Everyone who competed against the incumbent, that was what was being pushed. Because people want change. But again, everyone wants to have other people change as opposed to having it put upon themselves. Here we go. So let's see why it's hard. I'm going to pause on this picture for a minute just because I really think that dog picture is really cute. All right, everybody appreciate the picture? All right, cool. Sorry for any cat people on the phone. I'm a dog person. I hope that doesn't offend you. But cats can be really cute too. But anyway, why is it hard? First of all, it brings you outside your comfort zone. As I'm talking about comfort zone, I do not mean ethically, and I will refer to comfort zone a couple of other times also. You know, everything that, and for those of you who have been on webinars with me before, and I know I have a pretty good following out there, so many of you have, is that, you know, you've heard this shtick from me before, and that's that when I say out of comfort zone, what I mean is that you know it's a really important thing for you to give a presentation about your project to your boss, but you hate giving presentations. So that would be going outside your comfort zone to give that presentation. So by no means ever, ever, ever do I mean comfort zone as, ooh, that seems sleazy, but I guess I'll do it. Never. Okay. Anyway, so that it brings, you know, change makes you do things that you don't normally do, so it feels uncomfortable. I'll give you a couple of examples of change that you can try when you get home this evening. One of which is if you always brush your teeth holding the toothbrush with your right hand, put it in your left hand and see what happens. Is you'll see it takes a lot more energy. You have to pay a lot more attention. It's not quite as rote. Or for those of you tomorrow morning, is that if you blow dry your hair, typically what you do is you put the blow dryer in one hand and a brush in the other. Switch hands and see how it feels. It sounds like rote. It sounds sort of dumb, but it's very, very difficult because you have to pay attention. You know, I'm a martial artist by background, and in my early 40s, actually is that I like to refer to it as my mind wrote checks my body couldn't cash, and I ended up having to have elbow surgery. Now, I'm right-handed, so I needed elbow surgery on both elbows, but I needed it on my right elbow. The big joke is that the most dangerous part about the surgery that I'll be having on my elbow wasn't the surgery itself, it would be me shaving my face with my left hand, which brings us to risk. You know, with risk comes reward and all that, but whenever you do something differently, you know, there's always some risk. Will you do it well? Is it in your advantage? Is this organization change going to be good or bad for me? And this next one, you know, takes physical and mental energy. You'll see this one again, and you'll see it again when you brush your teeth later tonight with your toothbrush in the other hand. Is you'll see you really have to, it takes more mental energy because you have to pay attention. Also, us as humans, as our nature, we like to have control. And when things are changing around us, there's ambiguity, which is another term you'll see again. You don't necessarily feel that way. And also, as department managers or as you as a person, your productivity drops. Why? Because the steadfast processes that were in place are now changing. An example of that, think of it from an individual contributor's perspective, is let's say that that every week you have to either do an expense report or fill out a time card or one of those kinds of general administrative things. And then all of a sudden, poof, they go to a new piece of software. There's a new form. There's a new spreadsheet that you have to fill out or something to that effect. What happens is the first couple of times when you go to fill that out is you have to pay as much attention to the process as you do to the product. And all times that you're paying attention to the process, what that is that slowing you down getting things done. Like, think about this. When you first, let's say, for example, that you always drove an automatic car, and now you're going to learn a manual. Is that every time, when you're first in that car at that first stop sign, where you're doing a hill stop to go up a hill after the red light, you're not thinking about other things going on. What are you doing? You're saying, all right, left foot on the clutch, right foot on the brake. Oh, please don't stall, please don't stall. Yikes, how close is the car behind me? I don't want to whack them if I stall, if I roll backwards. And then the light turns green, you're saying, all right, flip the feet. All right, 1 foot on the gas, on the gas or off the brake, on the gas with the right foot, off the brake, the clutch with the left foot. You're paying full attention to the process. So change causes you to have to pay attention to the process, which reduces your productivity. 3 years later, you're at a red light. It's all rote. You're not even paying attention to which foot's on which pedal because you know it by definition. Next. Let's turn it now to the business world, most particularly to IT. So, IT is in a unique position, more so than anyone else within the company. And the reason is because we have a unique view of the entire organization. Certainly HR does. They see the whole organization. Finance sees the organization. But we're the only ones as IT people who see it at the functional task-based level. Why? Because we're giving people software. We're doing things that helps people do their jobs. We're automating their jobs. We're providing them an analysis to make decisions, etc. So as a result of that, not only do we have to deal with change within IT, but we also, whereas we may be the change makers or the change receivers, but every time we implement a new piece of software or change the email system or whatever it is where, I don't want to say inflicting, how about I'll say providing change to those outside of the organization, namely to the rest of the company. And here are some of the big reasons why this can happen. Top few are, it could be IT or the business, but technological. Actually the biggest changes now going on in technology related to either different IT megatrends. In fact, one of the biggest you see right now, and it was done by Nintendo, is augmented reality. With their the little Pokemon people, people are walking around the streets, with their phones. But anyway, augmented reality, virtual reality is something you're seeing, huge now. Imagine the changes that 3D printing is going to be doing to manufacturing. Do you know that they sent a 3D printer up to the space shuttle so that they can make their own spare parts? I mean, that's like cool stuff. And anyway, so other technology changes, if you're familiar with the term digital transformation, that's actually IT working with the company to basically redo company-wide processes and business models based on digital technology. Movement of IT to BT. What that is IT, obviously information technology, to what will eventually be named business technology. So that has huge implications inside of IT. When I started at IT, I don't know, about 100 years ago, I think, or only feels that way, I was in data processing. Hung around for a few years. Where did I end up? I ended up working in management information systems. Hung around for a few more years. I ended up in information technology, the IT group. God willing, if I hang around a little bit longer, then where will I be? I'll be in BT, business technology. Because there's a big change for IT is that there's no longer any technology-related projects. There's only business projects which require technological support. Organizational realignment. New sheriff in town, company got bought out, mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, all of those things that happen inside of an organization. Legal or regulatory changes. Certainly, if you're in a heavy regulated industry such as financial services, healthcare, etc., is that changes there can have dramatic effects on IT, because now we have to stop the projects we're working on and build new systems to generate new reports for government reporting. Staff movement. That could be layoffs, it could be dramatic hires, that ties a little bit into reorgs, it could be moving people from onshore to offshore, offshore to onshore, etc. Economic conditions, also industry trends and innovations. Certainly if you work for a cab company, is that Uber and other things have had dramatic effects on your business, which you can bet is changing some of the IT processes done within traditional transportation companies. Could be a change in corporate direction, or maybe it's a competitive landscape, and I'll give you one example of that one. Did anyone see in the Wall Street Journal or anywhere else recently that I think it was it earlier this week or the end of last week? I think it was the end of last week. What happened was Walmart bought Jet.com. Why? Because they need to be able to get to higher-end people to buy, or higher-end customers to properly be able to compete against Amazon. So there are huge changes internally related to e-commerce and such at really one of the most technically oriented companies in the world, Walmart. In fact, they're the ones who virtually invented inventory chain management. But anyway, those competitive changes are changing the way the company works and having dramatic effects on IT. Now let's just have a couple of examples here. And what these examples are, these are the kind of things that, happen all the time within IT, not these two particular items, maybe sometimes, but things just like it. This one is a staff reassignment. The situation. Internally built software applications are being outsourced to a cloud-based SaaS provider. Sound familiar to anybody? Oh, by the way, as I'm talking here, please remember, as Brian had said, is put in comments questions and such that you have. Love to hear them. And what'll happen is Brian will read them, and either in some cases maybe wait to the end, but he also knows that he can interrupt me anytime that he feels is appropriate to do so. That's also a cue, is if you get sick of listening to me for a second, get Brian on with a question, and you can listen to somebody else for a change. But anyway, here now is technological change is causing this. Now I'm going to give you the implications of this from a staff perspective. First of all is the staff consequences. The business analyst is going to stay in place. In fact, when I wrote for IT World, and I did that for about 4 years, my column was called Your IT Career. I wrote a column called The Golden Age of Business Analysts and Project Managers. And the reason it was exactly because of this, is with cloud-based products, what it does is it changes the ratio of technologists, namely programmers, between number of programmers needed and number of business analysts needed. Why? Well, because if you think about it, if you're implementing Salesforce, how many business analysts do you need? Well, you still need 1 or 2 business analysts. How many programmers do you need? Well, maybe you need 1 behind the scenes. If you're connecting up Salesforce, the data in Salesforce to other internal systems. But anyway, so the BA is going to stay in place. Key programmers will help during the conversion and will then be reassigned. So somebody, the IT manager went to him and said, I'll pick on Brian, I always do, and say, hey Brian, you're one of the lead techs on our internally built application. Your job is safe here. We have another assignment that's waiting for you as soon as this ends, but this project is officially outsourced, but we need you, where all the technical bodies are buried, so to speak. So what happens is we need you to see it till the end. Other programmers will be, because you're not making other enhancements and things along that line. Other programmers will be instructed to immediately start looking internally for new roles. What does internally look for a new role mean? It means, hey, we like you. We want you to stay with the company. We'll look around. We'll let you look around for a while until you find somebody. However, in the same stretch, is you better find somebody sort of quick, a job sort of quick, or you might be looking at the unemployment line. So anyway, with all that said, what would you do? That's a lot of what we're going to talk to. It's a rhetorical question for here. But I'll give you one more case of this. If you don't handle this one well, let's say you're outsourcing the human resource systems to Workday. Now, don't you think the people that are working on the financial systems are looking over their shoulder, wondering if the outsourcing of your homegrown general ledger receivables and payables is coming next? So therefore, the effective change, how well you deal with this one group of people, say your HR technical people, is that can have very wide implications regarding other parts of IT. Think about it. You do a marginal job on this, and all of a sudden what happens is you turn around, and in the case of 2 or 3 weeks, the entire group that's technically leading your financial systems are gone. This is the effect that basically change through technological enhancement can cause. Next, platform replacement. I'll give you the idea where I got the idea for this one. The other one actually was obviously something I've seen before also. But where this one came from is my wife used to work for a school system. And this has happened in lots of school systems where Google, being, in this case, I'm sure there's business reason too, but what they did was they allowed schools around the country to switch to Gmail for free. So what does this mean internally for organizations? I mean, for the IT parts of school systems, it means they used to have a server and they used to have to maintain Outlook Exchange. Well, what the school systems say, always looking for money, as they should to help the kids, is they said, hey, look at this. If we use Gmail for free, then we don't have to pay to upgrade our licenses and have internal systems and backup related to Outlook Exchange. So that's the situation. Due to budget cuts, you are forced to replace your current industry standard email system with Gmail. The user base likes the old system and does not want to make the change. You also like the new product, but you don't have the money to support it. Basically, the budget was changed to remove that, the licensing from your budget. The staff consequences, well, your staff is upset because, first of all, they and everybody else likes using it. Also, they're wondering, gee, you know what? What's the next application to move to the cloud? And the users and the IT staff are conspiring against you to fight the decision, when the truth is the decision was never yours in the first place. You were told it from a budgetary reason by the administrators, but as the IT person doing it, IT often takes the fall for these kind of things. How do you implement this change in a way that not only helps the organization move to it, but also, quite frankly, doesn't hurt your political capital as the one leading this effort? Now, from here, what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about change itself. Now, here, what this is, and there's 2 slides here. You'll see the 7 in all. But what these are what's called the myths about change. And I'm just going to touch on them very, very loosely. Again, if you want these in more detail, you'll be able to get this online, as Brian mentioned. But the myth of pressure. Everybody works for me. I'm going to tell them to do it different. Project done. The next one, myth of enlightenment. Well, I've told everyone the reason why this is so important to change in this direction. Oh, job done. The myth of completion. Well, the new software is installed. Job done. Everyone will just figure out how to use it. Next one. Myth of snake oil. Wow, all we have to do is follow these 5 steps from what this consultant gave us, and we're good to go? Great. Here are the 5 steps. Change is done. Myth of agreement. All right, everybody, I know you work for me, and I know this is important. Anyone on this conference call disagree with us making this change? Okay, by your silence, I will assume that everyone has agreed. That's great. Not so much. The next, myth of reorganization. You know what? We'll just shuffle around who reports to who, and those will solve all of our problems. And senior management saying, oh, you know what? I don't really want to deal with any of this change stuff. We hired the consultant. Let him or her deal with it. Done. None of these will work. You know, senior management must be involved, and you'll see as we go in why these myths, some of them probably sound a tad ridiculous to begin with, but even more so when we dig into some other techniques and some of the processes and some of the issues with change. Now, you want to change something. What's its relationship to your organizational culture? I have a quote. It's actually my quote, yay. And what it is as people have personalities, organizations have cultures. So what happens if someone asks you to do something that you totally agree with and you like, you think it's good for you, it's good for them, and you like it? What do? You do it. How about if someone tells you to do something that you just rubs you the wrong way, it just doesn't feel good or so on? What do? You push back. Well, the culture is the organizational's personality. So what happens is if you're trying to make a change in a way that is not consistent with your organizational culture, it won't happen. As a result, you'll have to change the culture first. Don't take my word for it. Name Peter Drucker sound familiar to anyone? Here's a very famous quote of his, and in my eyes, it's probably his most famous. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, which basically means that if your strategy that you come up with, whether it be for change, which all strategy causes change, unless your strategy is to do exactly what you're doing, is that if your culture isn't in a place to be able to handle it and to move toward it, then it won't work. But now let's take that one step farther then. That means that the first thing you may have to do to implement change is to modify your culture. How do you do this? By the way, I should say, these are what you're getting here are excerpts of a full-day class that we have by the same name of, IT as an agent of change. So what you're doing is you're seeing bits and pieces, wanting to give you just, from this to give you some real questions, real knowledge, and to be able to think on this. But whether it's, our class, which we offer through New Horizons, either as a private class at your company or publicly, public class, is that I suggest that this just being the beginning, this is to whet your appetite on change, but also give you some true things that you can use to your advantage now. Even if it's simply to enlighten you that says, wow, this change stuff is a lot harder than I thought. But anyway, here are things that have to be in place in order for the culture to change. Clear direction. Where do you want to go? Rationale has to make sense. The executives have to support it, and they have to reinforce it. You'll see that one a little farther down. You need to be consistent. You need to provide people training. And you need the key people that are within the company, those that everybody turns to and says, hey, what do you think of this change thing? Well, if the people who are the most influential, either because of their position or just because of their strength of personality and the respect that they receive from their peers, if that's in place, then it makes it easier to change. So anyway, step one to strategic change is make sure that your culture is in a place where that change will be accepted and will fit and roll into the fabric of the company. All right, we've talked about change from people. Now how about change as it relates to, the organization. Now let's talk about change as it relates to people individually. Now you can look at this one from two perspectives. First of which is you can look at it from your perspective. You're a person, and say, gee, how good are you at change? Is it difficult for you? Is it easy? What kind of change is easier for you than others, etc.? And by the way, it will be based on your personality, very consistent with organizations with their culture. But also as a manager or a project manager, is that what will happen is that as you see this, is understand the people that you're trying to change, those within your department or whatnot, is these are some of the issues that they will run across and that you will run across trying to change them. First, is for people to change. In other words, there are some people who sort of roll with the punches, and there are others who are just steadfast in their beliefs and in their, I'm sorry, not in their beliefs, in their actions and the way they do things, and so on. Now, there's been a lot of research done that basically shows there are 3 key personal attributes that make it easy or hard for people to change, depending if they're in place or not. The first of which is a high threshold for ambiguity. What I mean by ambiguity is you can basically say, well, I don't need everything, I don't need all my ducks in a row today, you know, things will eventually settle down, so we'll just sort of figure out what to do for now. Black and white thinkers can find this very difficult. Those who say, well, we'll figure it out over time, we'll sort of, you know, just see how it goes. So high threshold to ambiguity is number 1. Number 2 is a constructive internal dialogue. Your internal dialogue is the voice in your head. Is the voice in your head saying, gee, you know what? I like change. You know, with risk comes reward. Or, gee, I'm sort of an opportunistic person. I wonder how I can take advantage of this. Or it's, well, yeah, we've been through some other organization changes, got through those, I'm sure I'll get through this one. Or are you saying, oh my God, what is this going to do? Am I going to lose my job? Oh God, if that happens, I don't know if I can get another one. Gee, I never really thought the boss's boss liked me. I wonder if I'm going to be included in a bad way within this. So anyway, the more you have a positive mental dialogue for lots of things in life, the easier it will be for you to accept change in general. And the third one, which I alluded to earlier as I did the ambiguity one, is high emotional and physical energy. Emotional, physical, and mental energy. Because you have to think about things more. Believe me, if you go and brush your teeth with your other hand tonight, you're going to be thinking about it, saying, wow, did I do my front teeth yet? You know, because you have to think, you know. So anyway, people who have high energy, they need it in order to get through the change because of the extra emotional tax that it has. You may be doing physical things or just mentally trying to sort things out. So anyway, as you're assessing how easy it's going to be for people in your team to change, look at them from these 3 key factors. Next, who are the ones who institute change in a company? This might be you. This might be some of the internal leaders in your company. There may be none of them if your company doesn't like change, because these people will eventually get frustrated and leave. And when they'll leave, they'll either go to more dynamic organizations or they'll start their own companies. And no, this isn't a typo. It's intrapreneur, meaning it's a person who has an entrepreneur's mentality and interest and love for mixing things up, but, you know, for many reasons feel that they would rather have the security of working inside of a company and sort of getting the paycheck, so to speak. But who are these people? And they're important to companies. They're your internal change agents. This is the person who comes to you and says, hey, boss, I think it'd be really good if we tried to do this process in this way instead of that one. Or the person in your team that says, hey, you know what? Hey, Brian, we just introduced this great new piece of software, the one we just moved into production for the budget people. You know, I think a lot of people in our industry could use this. I think we should try to sell this internal product as a SaaS-based product and make IT a revenue center. This is where these things come from. It's from these kinds of people. They're the internal thought leaders. So the question is, do you want to be one of these? You may not. You know, there's no right or wrong or good or bad. It's just a question. But if you do, how could you use this mentality to your benefit? If you have someone in your group like this, can that person help you enhance company processes and methodologies, efficiency, and productivity? And if the answer there is yes, then foster their ideas coming out. Because a big part of change, very often in company, it isn't just revenue production. A lot of time, it's revenue creation. It's cost reduction, it's improved quality, or a number of other things that fall under this realm also. Sorry, too fast at the switch here. Ah, there we go. Sorry. My hand slid across my mouse, and whoosh, half a dozen slides went by. But I guess you saw previews of coming attractions. Now, as a manager, what skills do you need in order to move forward your group? And as I say manager, it could be a number of things. It could be manager in a company. It could be maybe you're leading a group of volunteers or in a particular event and you want to do the auction different than it was done last year. Or maybe you're, this year running in charge of your local religious affiliation or the local chapter of Lions Club, or, it doesn't have to be a paid position to be in a position of authority to try to have to impart change on others. It could be a parent who has 4 kids that was just moved to another city, and you're trying to get the kids really psyched to make that change from one city to another and find new friends and all that other stuff that causes. The first thing that you need to do in order to help others through change is to accept it yourself. Because if you don't, you'll never be able to be a good enough actor for people who know you to say, oh yes, this change is really good. I can't wait for this to happen. And they're looking at you like, come on, I know you're better than that. I can see it on your face. So you as a leader inside your company, as a manager, and you're a leader too, it's a leader of those people looking up to you. You need to, maybe not embrace it, but you have to accept it as reality and move forward to help implement it. Next, see the big picture. Have you ever thought, and I'm not at the companies you're at, but in previous companies, where you've said, why are they making this change? What are they, a bunch of idiots? All right, that kind of thing. Now, what happens is usually when people say that, it isn't because their senior leadership is incompetent. Usually what it is you don't have the full picture of why that change is being made. So, as a result, transparency. If you knew why they were making the change, or why they made this decision or moved in that direction, you may not agree with it. And you may say, if it was me, I wouldn't have come to that same decision. However, you'll most likely be able to sit back and say, well, yeah, I get it. I see why they did it. So that's sort of, and then that allows you to think outside the box and see the bigger picture. But also, is that this list here, you have to be persistent. You have to continually push on. A little flexible, because what do they say? Humans make plans and God laughs. You have to be creative. And the bottom two, opportunistic, that gets to the voice in your head, and opportunistic, meaning, hey, maybe there's some great things for me or my department here. Now, for change to work, it must have these 4 attributes. This could also have been titled the critical success factors of change. It must be goal-oriented. In other words, it has to achieve something. You don't want to just change to change. It has to be proactive, meaning that you have to lead activities. You've got to make things happen. Change doesn't just happen on its own. It has to be purposeful. In other words, people have to be able to say, oh, I see how this ties to a future strategy. And it also has to be ethical and logical. Like, if it's not ethical, if it leaves people, I'm not going to say outside their comfort zone, because that means different things when I say it. But if ethical, if they're saying, ooh, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable with this one, then probably is the majority of people won't want to move to it because they have a natural reluctance. Now, when change is put upon people, now this could be change of any type. It could be, oh my God, I lost my job. It could be, oh my God, we're merging with a bigger company and I don't want to work for a bigger company. It could be, oh wow, our pastor or rabbi is leaving and someone else is coming in. I like the old one. When this happens, is people go through 4 stages of change. The first is denial. Nah, this will never happen. Is that, no, I've heard the rumors of this, but no, it'll never go through. And then there's resist, where people will actually fight a little bit against it. In the case of the clergyman going to he or she and saying, no, you really do want to stay, and look at all the people here and all this wonderful place and the weather's nice. You don't really want to go there, do you? So it's active resistance. Then what will happen is people will explore it. Oh, talk to the new manager. She's not so bad. Maybe this is okay. And then you commit to the change. What we as managers need to do is very often people will get stuck in one of the first three levels. And if they do, it can cause havoc for your department, for you personally. It can help you miss goals, particularly if they stay and resist. And eventually, something needs to happen. And either, in many cases, what it is it's you, in fact, having to replace that person, or that person saying, I just don't like this change, voting with their feet and leaving. Next is these are the agents of change. What agents of change are, they're pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, half dollars. Those are change. No, I'm sorry, I had to get that one in at least once. I used to have a slide in here as a quick aside, which shows how, I use it in actually the real class for this, which says how people deal with change, and they're holding a handful of nickels. But anyway, the agents of change fall into three categories: education, engineering, and enforcement. Education is really letting people understand why the change is being made through effective communication, and basically educating them on what needs to be done. In other words, is that, all right, you want me to change, that's cool, and we'll see this later in one of the formalized models, but I don't know what to do. So there's education that comes in. Engineering, it's how well are you implementing or orchestrating the change? What's your plan to make this happen? And lastly, enforcement. It's gentle nudges to make sure that people go in the right direction. It's starting with very small wins, things that are easy for people to do, so that it builds some momentum so that when you get to the more difficult, longer-term issues, it's easier for people to accept it. Which, by the way, starting with short wins, that's used in influence. It's used in conflict resolution. It's used in negotiation. That's a true, almost life skill, well beyond just trying to facilitate change in the workplace. Next, you have to tell people about it. You have to persuade them to change. This is the influence part. And again, as we're going through this, understand that, I'm just trying to give you a smattering of all of these topics. Because, when I first, earlier in my career as a manager, I'd say, well, change, just tell people to do it. As I always sort of was pretty easy with change and thought that everyone else was, until I tried to implement it. But anyway, next thing you need to do is you have to have persuasive communication. And what does this mean? You have to be careful. You have to be clear in your own mind what you want to say, and then before you can actually say it. Be consistent in your message. I'll just give you a quick example of this one. Let me say that Brian says, "Why are you changing?" To save money. And then someone else says, "Why are we changing?" "Oh, to position the company for future growth." Oh, and then what happens is those two people talk behind the scenes and says, "Wait a minute. Eric told me that they're doing the change, that we're doing this change to increase revenue. Wait a minute, he told me to reduce costs. What's really going on? Oh my God, is the company closing? Are they going to sell us?" People will try to read between the lines if you don't have consistent messaging. Other things like explaining the rationale in a way listeners best understand it. This is the idea of transparency and so on. The next one is, whereas you persuade people more with human dimension than with statistics. That's why, and again, it's both Democrat and Republican, I'm just going to say politicians, I'm not going either direction, is what do they all do, whether it's the State of the Union or the State of the State, or any big inaugural thing, is what do they say? They say, 32 million people have done this. For example, Joe here in the audience. Joe, where are you? Stand up so everybody can applaud you. Yay, Joe. Joe was one of the people that went through this program that I'm talking about. Why do they do that? They put a human face on things, and it allows people to emotionally accept what's going on. Now, this is the first of what you'll see is a few things related to change itself. This is a 10-step model. This is ours. But, we'll talk about some formal methodologies also. But first I'm going to sneeze, so excuse me for a second. That was not part of the formal presentation. Anyway, I'm back. Anyway, you'll see here you have to start with the current state. Where am I now? From there, that's your grounding. If you're going to change from something, you have to know what the from is. The future desired state is you're changing from this to that. And then you have to document the why, the when, and the how. You know, the why is the transparency, the how and the when is your plan. You know, it's the engineering piece from one of the previous slides. How are you going to measure success? How are you going to know if it worked? You also have to figure out the stakeholders then, or all right, who are all the people who are going to be affected by this? And then you develop the plan. So take this one to the bank. Numbers 1 through 6, you haven't told anybody about it yet. 6 of these 10 steps are upfront analysis, planning, and strategic thinking. It's not till step 7 where you're going to be communicating what the change is. Now, in 1 through 6, you may be planning it with some confidants and people of your team who are help orchestrating the change. But before you really, you know, present it as a full-baked idea, you don't do that till step 7. And once you tell everybody about it, you actively and consistently execute on your plan, you measure your results, and then you document how it went. The reason being is that you know, you'll learn from it for next time. Maybe there are additional changes that need to be made because maybe everything didn't turn out 100% correct, or maybe a couple of places worked out so well that you're going to do more of it. So, you know, when you measure things, measurement isn't always bad. It very often is a really good thing. So then, with those measurements, what does it allow you to do? It allows you then to ask yourself some questions. And these are questions you should ask yourself on an ongoing basis. You know, how are the staff, internal clients, and others reacting to the change? Basically, you're saying, hey, are people listening to what we're saying? How have attitudes, assumptions, and perceptions changed? Well, if everyone's growling at you in the hallway, then their attitudes aren't very good, and their perception is that maybe you shouldn't have done this in the first place. Or, of course, the opposite, like, wow, this is great, let's continue. What are staff and managers doing differently as an outcome of this? Well, are things being done more efficiently? If you're implementing, I don't know, new kind of performance reviews, you know, are people happy with their raises? Is staff performance and productivity increasing, or whatever is your objective of the change? And remember, is that what do you tie these back to? The measurements and such that we talked about in the planning stage. Here. Next. Were your change objections met? You know, did you achieve them? And lastly, what have you learned from this overall process that you would do differently? Which, if you think these questions, what do? They tie back to a lot of things in this change management process. Now, what I'd like to do here is I'd like to switch gears. And I'd just like to talk about some formal change methodologies by, quite frankly, people smarter than me. The idea being is because, you know, as you go to implement change, you know, what these can be are, among other things, deeper places. We can go to Wikipedia or get a book on it, or just, you know, do a Google search or whatnot to learn a little bit more about how these formal methodologies work. The first, unfreeze, transition, and refreeze. Myself, I like this one a lot. The reason is it's only 3 steps and it's easy to remember. So the unfreeze, what that is you create the right conditions for the change to occur. So what does that mean? And how have you seen that? You ever see, I'm going to go back to politicians just because everybody sort of gets it, where they go, the economy is terrible, there are issues, you know, we're this, we're that, oh my God, things aren't good, we're having problems with. Or you see it in companies who are saying, we're falling behind the competition, you know, we have problems, we have to do things differently. What is that? That's unfreezing. That's getting everybody to say, wow, we better do something different, which is setting the mood for change. You're unfreezing their feelings towards the existing process or normality or whatever it might be. And then there's the transition. The transition is, okay, we want everybody to do it this way instead of that way. Here's the implementation of the new system, the new office space, the new this, the change to that, whatever it is that you're trying to do differently. That's the transition. And then what you do is you want to, poof, institutionalize. That's where you're, that's the refreeze. Because, you know, every process you're using in your company now, it hasn't been there since the dawn of time. At some point, going to the process that you're using now was a change from some older process. But now it sort of feels institutionalized because everybody's been doing it for the last 5 years. And what's really fun about this, if you think about it, let's say that, you know, you're always complaining about the time card system. So what happens is, I'm just going to say time cards 4 years ago and then a new one. So what happens is 40 years ago, you liked the old time card system. It was a little clunky. It was done manually, but worked pretty well. And then they introduced this piece of software, and you fight it tooth and nail. You're telling your friends, oh, my God, it was just so easy to fill out the timesheet. Now we got this computer thing we have to do. You hate it, you hate it, you hate it. All of a sudden it refreezes. You've used it for a couple of years, and now that timesheet, automated timesheet system is just, yeah, it's the way it's done. It's cool. You just fill it out. Poof, you're on your way. And then a year from now, they change it again. They move from a homegrown to a cloud-based product. And then what do you say? You say, I can't believe they're moving away from this great system that we have, and now we've got to learn a new way to do time cards. When people say that to you, say this, you know what? 4 years ago, you fought me tooth and nail to get the system that now you don't want to leave. So why? Because people get comfortable with it. So anyway, that's unfreeze, transition, and refreeze. Next one. This one I think has incredible insights into it, but it's an 8-stepper. If you're going to use this, it's good more for you to research it and have it in hand. But you have to increase the urgency. Oh my God, we have to do it now. Build a guiding team. In other words, who's going to help you to make this happen? And then you get the vision right. This is the strategy. This is what people are going to buy into. Then number 4, you communicate it. So like before, 1 to 3 is now, you know, with the exception of urgency, you're sort of working on the unfreeze a little bit. And then what do? You empower action. You help the people doing the change, remove the obstacles, teach them the new process, show them the new software, give them T-shirts that says, we love this stuff, right? And then what do? You create short-term wins, back to what you saw previously. And then what you do is you don't let up. You have to continually, basically, be on it like white on rice, making it happen. And then from there, what you do is you make the change stick, which is what? It's the refreeze. It's the reinstitutional of it. Now, you might be saying to yourself, gee, the one that I showed you, the couple you've seen already, is that, you know, these are, they're sort of the same. Well, of course they are, because people are people and change is change. They're just looking at it from different directions. And there are other, you know, very real thought leaders out there, like Carter, who've looked at it from different perspectives. What you should do is you gain additional knowledge on change management, other than, I'm sorry, I can't help myself, take our class on it, is learn more about it on your own. Look at this as a beginning, as the beginning of your journey to understand change, not as a final event. Next is what this one is basically is that there are 3 things that need to be in place. Awareness, you have to know that the change is going to happen. Capability, you have to have the ability to change. And inclusion is that you have to want to change. So think about it. Yeah, you know you're supposed to do something different, you have the ability to do it, but you don't want to do it, it's not going to get done. Well, think of these 3 actually maybe from your staff's perspective if you're managers. Is that people have the ability to change, they're willing to do it, you just haven't told them that they're supposed to. There's no change. Or what happens is they're willing to change, they know they're supposed to, but they don't have the capacity because you haven't told them how. So these are 3 very key factors that must all be in place in order for change to happen sufficiently. See, a lot more to this stuff than you thought. From here today, I have 3 great quotes, and then hang on with me here. The first of which is, I love this quote, "You must be the change you see in the world," by Gandhi. The second one, "The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking." That's the add diversity to your team, bring in other people, the diversity of thought as well as thinking outside the box. The next one is never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all who ever have. That's Margaret Mead. Now, from here, what I'd like to do is change again. From here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to say, first of all, I hope this was of great value to you, that you've learned some things and so on. These were actually part of a number of our classes that we have, and I'd like to give you some stuff that we have coming out, the first of which is free. This webinar, if this is the first time you're joining me, namely the Manager Mechanics webinars, we've been doing it with New Horizons monthly for years now. I'm not even sure how long, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. Our next one is on September 20th, and it's on influencing others. Typically, you would see that as leading without authority. Great for everybody, particular project managers who have dotted line resources. We have 3 one-day classes coming up. One on managing virtual teams. If you have people in multiple locations, sign up for this one-day class. If you have a lot of it in your company, by the way, all 3 of these classes shown here on the 19th, 23rd, and 26th. Talk to your New Horizons person, and we can actually do that as in-house corporate programs specifically for you guys. The next one on is data governance and oversight, but most specifically as it relates to cloud, big data, data quality and such, is that how do you make sure those things are happening? You're implementing cloud applications or big data left and right. How do you assure you have the proper oversight and guidance? That's what this class will teach you. And the next is on I don't know where that came from, on September 26th, what we have is a class called the Steve Jobs Way. And what it is that we know that from a leadership perspective, he wasn't that nice of a guy. But when you strip away, sort of his vibrato, his leadership concepts and his thoughts on innovation are fascinating. Is that Manager Mechanics is the exclusive training provider by 2 books, great books written by Jay Elliott, who was a senior mentor of Jobs. His books were called The Steve Jobs Way and Leading Apple with Steve Jobs. It's just, I think there's brilliant stuff in there that we've tried to cull for the class. Next is for those of you who are looking for basically someone to have a turnkey leadership program for your IT leadership group. What we do is we'll work with you to put together a cohort of people within your group, your company, 10, 20 IT managers, whatever it might be, and then we have a year-long program that includes customized to you, that includes monthly online classes, conversations, additional research, resources, teleconferences, etc. Talk to your rep about that, and we can get you set up for a great year-long program. And also is that Manager Mechanics is the governing body for 2 certifications in IT management. The ITMLE we offer monthly. Actually, it's being offered beginning today. We do it monthly. This month started today. But anyway, what it is it's these 10 topics shown here condensed into 3 days. And then with that, there is an exam that's offered free associated with the tuition so that you may become basically ITMLE certified. Look at it as a certification for IT managers, either in the roles or people who would like to move from management. And then lastly, I'll say on that is that, the certification is nice, but the material that you learn in this program on these classes will be of help to you throughout your career. There's also an advanced version of it we teach 3 times a year. The next time is in December, called the IT, obviously Information Technology, Management and Leadership Executive, which is 10 topics like this one, but they're more advanced management topics such as strategic thinking and planning, negotiation, fostering IT innovation, and other topics like that. From here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it back to Brian to say, are there any questions that came in or any final thoughts from you, sir?
1 second, here's some questions. Oh, no, people are just saying great, thank you. No questions. There were a few that came in, but they were more around the presentation and the PowerPoint, as well as the recordings. So with that being said, I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Eric, for taking time of your day to once again give a wonderful and great presentation, as well as thank everyone for taking their time out of their day to join you and myself for this webinar.
My pleasure. Thank you to everyone on the line. You have a great day, and I hope it was of value.
Thank you, everyone.